All right, it's 6 o'clock. Are we ready to start?
Yes, I am.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Good evening and welcome to the Fairbanks NAACP final of our series of state election candidate forums. Tonight we are hosting candidates of seat 35 and seat R. I'm especially excited tonight because this is my district. These are my people that we're going to be hearing from tonight. I'm Helen Marie Matese, Vice President of our Fairbanks NAACP Branch 1001. The mission of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People is to ensure the political, educational, social, and economic equality of rights of all persons and to eliminate racial hatred and racial discrimination. We acknowledge that we work and live on the land of the Chena Dene people. Through voting, we fulfill our duty to be involved in our society and affect change. To do this responsibly, we must educate ourselves about our potential leaders. On behalf of the NAACP, I wish to thank and welcome our moderator, Alex Hirsch, and thank our technical support. And welcome our audience as well. Our audience are made up of potential voters who, by educating themselves here and voting, determine our political future. Every vote counts. We voted a few weeks ago and the results were very, very close. Out of our 77,000 people population, 13,000 people voted. We want people to do better. We want more people to vote. In the last weeks, we have hosted contenders for many relevant seats in our areas. I hope you will join us. I'm pleased that people have joined us for these candidate forums. And again, I thank you all for giving your time to run and coming and joining us and sharing yourselves and telling us who you are and what you stand for. All right, I'll introduce you to Alexander Hirsch. Professor Alexander Hirsch from University of Alaska, who is going to be our moderator tonight. Professor Hirsch.
Thanks, Helen Marie. Good evening, everyone. As Helen Marie mentions, my name is Alex Hirsch, and I'm a professor of political science from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. It is my distinct privilege and honor to serve as your moderator tonight. Before we begin, I do want to thank the NAACP for generously organizing this forum. These forums are incredibly valuable to our state and to the interior, to our communities. I also want to thank our candidates for their civic courage and their dedication and their willingness to serve in these roles, which are so important. These jobs are not easy, but they're incredibly impactful. So thanks to all of you who are able to join us this evening for your willingness to run. I also want to thank our audience for being here. It's so important for us to become more and more informed about who has stepped up to serve in a leadership role within our state. And finally, I want to mention and recognize Wendy Dominique is here. She's going to be serving as our timekeeper this evening. Very, very important role, arguably the most important role in any candidate forum. So I'm just going to talk a little bit here about what to expect. So we are joined by three candidates in a moment. We'll hear from them. They'll each have 2 minutes to introduce themselves, after which we're going to move into the substantive question portion of the evening. And we have 7 questions. I'm going to pose each question one by one. Each candidate will have an opportunity to speak for up to 2 minutes in response to those questions. After which we're going to enter a lightning round portion of the forum. And that really, it's gonna be about 5 minutes for all 5 questions to be asked and answered. And then towards the end, of course, we'll offer our candidates the opportunity to provide some closing remarks. And each candidate will have 2 minutes each in order to articulate and express those statements. Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to turn things over to our candidates so that they can offer some introductory statements. We do have 3 candidates with us this evening, 2 of which are running for House District 35 in Kevin McKinley and Ashely Carrick. We also are joined by Elijah Verhagen, who is running for Senate Seat R. And I'd like to begin with Kevin McKinley. Sir, could you introduce yourself?
You're muted.
Sorry about that. I was muted. I was trying to be a good Zoom attendee. As I was saying, my name is Kevin McKinley. I'm running for House District Seat 35. I lived in Alaska for, oh gosh, since the early 70s. And I originally came up here from Minnesota with my mother, who wanted to move as far away from the cities as possible. And we landed in Kotzebue on an airplane that ended up overshooting the runway. And she looked at me and she said, "Isn't this exciting?" And I looked at her in shock as the airplane is over the pavement and into the dirt. And that's how my whole time in Alaska has been, is exciting, whether it's a scary moment or an adventurous moment. And I look at Alaska as a very rich and exciting place. I'm a businessman. I've been in business in the same business for the last, oh gosh, 32 years now. And so I think that Juneau needs more people that own businesses and run businesses. I think that's an important part of our makeup of our state. And I've always had a sense to serve and be a part of the community. And so that's why I'm running. And thank you very much. And thank you for putting this on, and for those out there that are watching and listening, thank you for taking part of it.
Thank you very much. Ashely Carrick, you have 2 minutes to introduce yourself.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And I hope my internet holds out tonight. If it does not, I apologize, and I will try to get back on as quick as possible. But I just want to start by thanking the NAACP for hosting. This is the first candidate forum that I know that I've gotten an opportunity to be a part of this election cycle, and I really appreciate the chance to address the members and also the community in this way. And thank you to Dr. Hirsch for monitoring, and for the listeners as well. I am Ashely Carrick. I am a 4th generation lifelong Alaskan. I grew up in Anchorage. I was born and raised there, moved up to Fairbanks over a decade ago, and I've made my home here ever since. I am deeply passionate about Alaska. I have the campaign slogan, "All in for Alaska," because I would rather be here in our state on its worst day than anywhere else on its best day. And at the core of my decision to run was my want to serve this state for the long term. I consider my time in Fairbanks as a homecoming, a generation in the making. My grandmother grew up in Fairbanks, and she ended up getting married and moving to Healy, where my grandfather was a teamster at UC Valley Coal Mine, and I grew up playing in the library, where she was a librarian there. My work background has been pretty diverse. I've worked in the nonprofit field. Most recently, I've worked for the last 6 years as the chief of staff to Representative Wool down in Juneau, who is the outgoing legislator for this seat. And my campaign platform is built around 3 main goals from my time working and living in this state. I want to promote Alaska's economic future, preserve access to education and higher education, and protect the public health, safety, and well-being of all Alaskans. At the end of the day, I want to see a state where everyone has a future where we can thrive and where we can all succeed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Elijah Verhagen.
Good evening, and good to see you, Professor Hirsch. He was one of my honestly favorite professors when I was going through political science at UAF, and it's exciting to be on this with all of you tonight, and I'm grateful for the NAACP for providing this opportunity. So a little bit about me. I am born and raised here in the great state of Alaska and in the interior. I have done construction most of my life as my career. However, I got an associate's degree from UAF in construction management and a bachelor's in political science. I use both degrees, and it's worked out well doing construction, where in the winter, when January hits, that's the slowest time for construction. It's enabled me to go work in Juneau as a staffer on and off for 7 different legislative sessions for 4 different legislators. So I'm not new to politics down in Juneau. I've carried legislation, and I already have a bunch of bills I plan to hit the ground running and carry that are going to be beneficial for my district. District R is a massive district. It's the biggest district in Alaska and the biggest district in the U.S., State Senate District. For the Fairbanks area, it covers Chenapump, Chena Ridge, Sheep Creek, Airport, Geist, a little bit of College, and then in the other half, the rural area where I'm from, Nenana, and many of the villages, about 50 communities and villages, including Delta, Tok, Glen Allen, Copper Valley, Galena, Fort Yukon, all the way to the Canadian border. It's massive. I'm running against an incumbent that's been in there 10 years. I support term limits. I think 8 years is more than enough time. And so I'm doing my best to throw a retirement party for him on November 8th by voting for Verhagen. And I'm also I'm passionate about this state and the issues that are facing, especially our rural areas that we felt very ignored in the past 10 years, honestly. Our moose populations are declining, our salmon populations are declining, and I have ideas to help address those. I don't claim to know everything, but I am passionate about this state and wanting to do what I can to help. Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, so with that, we're going to move forward into the substantive question portion of the evening. As I said, we have 7 questions. Each of you will have 2 to 3 minutes to answer. I'm going to try to vary the order in which candidates are going to respond to give all of you a chance to go first, middle, and last. Why don't we start, Ashely Carrick, with you for the first question, because Kevin McKinley went first for the introductions. This first question, do you support a constitutional convention? Why or why not?
Great, thank you so much. I am 100% not in support of a constitutional convention. I have tried to do outreach throughout this campaign cycle in addition to my own campaign to make sure voters understand the real cost that a constitutional convention could have. Our state is very lucky, and in a lot of ways, we have a model and modern constitution that really puts the rights and privileges of Alaskans first. And we're also fairly lucky because our constitution was written fairly recently in our state's history. So we can actually go and watch those proceedings and look back and understand a lot better than maybe other states can what some of the motivations of the Constitution Convention members were. I also am concerned about the potential to limit our rights and protections we currently have if we had a constitutional convention. And I do think that a constitutional convention opens us up for a potential free-for-all for special interest groups, many of which might come from outside of the state of Alaska. So I encourage Alaskans to oppose a convention.
Okay, thank you. Elijah Verhagen, same question. Do you support a constitutional convention? Why or why not?
I do. So at first I was a little bit hesitant because it opens up the entire Constitution up for debate. However, I'm not really scared of the Alaskan people. And what I have noticed working down in Juneau on and off for, like I said, 7 legislative sessions, is I've seen a lot of legislators that have good ideas and they get elected, they get down there and they get in this can't do mentality. And a lot of times the struggle to get some of the things that Alaskans are passionate about that require a constitutional amendment rarely come to fruition down there in Juneau and pass both bodies and then are placed on the statewide ballot. There are checks and balances with the Constitutional Convention. So if if we do have a constitutional convention, then whatever comes out of the constitutional convention, which I don't think will honestly be much, because it'll have to be heavily debated in there and then passed with enough support, obviously, to make it out of there. But then we as voters statewide have one more chance to see what came out of that convention, and it'll be placed on a ballot statewide, and we'll get to vote for it, yay or nay. So I'm not scared of the people of Alaska. I think this is a way to get around the legislators that sometimes don't have the willpower to do stuff that the people want. And so, yes, I'm a yes vote.
Okay, thank you so much. Kevin McKinley, same question. Do you support a constitutional convention? Why or why not?
I have been so mixed on this topic. I have been going back and forth and researching this topic. And it seems like every time I learn something new about it, I'll start thinking maybe we should, and then I'll learn another fact and maybe we shouldn't. And one of the things that's really started to change my mind about it is the outside money that's being pushed to say no. The Say No campaign, it seems like there's a lot of money that's coming in to support the no vote on that. And that part bothers me. It really reminds me a lot of ballot measure 2, where a lot of outside money came in to support that. And I understand that there are some subjects that would really do well with the Constitutional Convention. The permanent fund dividend, some judicial reform, and others. And I guess in the end, I do trust the Alaskan people. I'm making my mind up as we go here. I could see one. I could see a constitutional convention. I do like the checks and balances of it, but just to let you know, it's something that I'm learning about all the time. So okay. I would say yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next question, Elijah Verhagen, we're going to start with you now. Question number 2, the Alaska State Legislature has failed to pass adequate protections for LGBTQ Alaskans facing discrimination. What will you do during your term to protect your LGBTQ constituents and address the problems they face every day?
Thanks for the question. So I firmly believe that all men are created equal. And I will fight for that, and I always have fought for that, and I will continue to do so. So I will promise and do what I can to look in, and the more information I can gather, the better. But if from the state side, if there's anything that I can see that is persecuting people because of, their sexual orientation, I will be doing what I can to fix that or end that persecution. I will say, however, I will not be doing anything that pushes or promotes the LGBTQ agenda, because personally, I do not believe in that lifestyle. However, I believe everyone's created equal. And so I will be doing what I can to defend their rights, just like I will be fighting for the rights of everyone. So I can promise that absolutely. No one should be persecuted because of their sexual orientation. And so I'll be keeping a close eye on that.
Okay, thank you so much. Kevin McKinley, same question. The Alaska State Legislature has failed to pass adequate protections for LGBTQ Alaskans facing discrimination. What will you do during your term to protect your LGBTQ constituents and address the problems they face every day?
We do have federal protections for the community, and I do think that they do protect them adequately. I do have a lot of LGBTQ people that I hire and employ. I value that community a lot, and I think they're a very significant part of our community. And so I do believe that they should be treated as everyone else and have the same rights as everyone else.
Okay, thank you. Ashely.
And since I had some time left, on the
Sorry.
Constitutional Convention question, I meant to say, ended up saying yes, and I meant no on that. So I don't know how to fix that.
You just did.
Okay.
With the time that you have left, do you want to clarify?
On the Constitutional Convention? Or the,
Sure.
Yeah, I was going back and forth, and was talking about the things that made me say yes and no, and so I misspoke there, and I apologize that, and sorry for any inconvenience to the people keeping track of this. On the LGBTQ question, as I said, I think that they're a very big part of our community, and I value them, and I do think that we do try to protect and protect them. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Ashely Carrick, same question. What will you do during your term to protect LGBTQ constituents and address the problems they face every day?
Yeah, I really appreciate this question. I am proud to identify as a bisexual woman, and if elected, I would be one of potentially the first cohort of openly LGBT legislators to be elected to the Alaska State Legislature. Currently, Alaska and South Dakota are the only two states that have not elected any openly LGBT legislators before, and so I would be happy to break that barrier finally for Alaskans as well. I tell people that I didn't run because I'm LGBT, but I do think that the fact that I am an LGBT woman and the fact that I'm running is important, and it sends a message. Additionally, as a legislator, I would hope to continue working on and gain consensus to pass a non-discrimination law for the state. I think that's important, and it's long overdue. I also support social and emotional learning. Grier-Hopkins had a bill to that effect, which isn't related to LGBT education or anything about that. But I think that when we look at the health outcomes of LGBT students in our state, and as someone with a master's in public health, I have concerns about how we are adequately supporting our students and adults in the population who identify as LGBT. And I want to do what I can to improve both health outcomes and community support for these individuals.
Okay, thank you. Kevin McKinley, we're going to start with you for our third question. Past legislatures have struggled to implement a long-term climate action plan to address, prepare, and respond to climate disasters. Do you support climate legislation? How will you work with your colleagues to continue to address climate crises?
Thank you for the question. On the issue of climate, I think one of the biggest things that Alaska can do is continue developing our natural gas. I think that is one of the things that can help our climate the most, is reducing our footprint. And also, Alaska is doing a lot of work with developing the electric cars, and there are charging stations throughout the state of Alaska. We've got one barrier in there between Cantwell and I believe it's 50 miles past, where we are having a hard time putting a charging station. And I think this is the direction that we need to go, is solutions that actually reduce our carbon footprint. So I think that's the direction that we need to take, is supporting more things that, whether it's different sources of energy or transportation. I think that's the direction the state should go.
Okay, thank you. Ashely Carrick, same question. Past legislatures have struggled to implement a long-term climate action plan to address, prepare, and respond to climate disasters. Do you support climate legislation? How will you work with your colleagues to continue to address climate crises?
Yeah, this is another really great question. And I definitely do support climate legislation. I think that gaining consensus on this issue has been a challenge the legislature has faced. And so whether people are supporting additional renewable resource development, or whether we're just looking at how to reduce our current fossil fuel extraction resource development, or at least put firm regulatory oversight in place on those industries, those are just some options. We have potentially a lot of solutions we can employ and work across the aisle to gain consensus on. One thing that I think is really important, as somebody who's endorsed by the Alaska Center, I really want to emphasize, I believe that our current natural resource development and our fossil fuel economy is a part of our present, and it's something that really has fueled Alaska's economy for a long time. It's a part of my family's history, but it's not our long-term future. And right now, Alaska is blessed with having quite a bit of federal infrastructure funding that we can utilize to focus on projects that are forward-thinking, that are going to help us get through not just the next 5 years, but 10, 50, 100 years. And I want to plan for that future. And I believe that future includes renewables, and solutions to address climate change and help our communities get through the devastating impacts of climate disaster.
Okay, thank you. And Elijah Verhagen, same question. Do you support climate legislation? How will you work with your colleagues to continue to address climate crises?
So I absolutely agree that the climate is changing, and I agree with that science. I feel, however, that the climate is always changing. And so we need to adapt, and we need to be very vigilant on that front. And so I will be looking at solutions and discussions of how we can help adapt with the climate change. Absolutely. In my opinion, our carbon emissions is a different subject, but yet absolutely needs to be addressed. We should be good stewards of the earth and the land that we live on. And so I will be doing what I can to push green energy development. There's currently in my district in Enana, right where I'm from, a project right now going on that with solar panels that they're doing their best. This company, the same one that did the solar panel farm down in Willow, if you guys have seen it, you drive by on the Parks Highway there. It's a big solar farm. They're looking to do one 10 times the size right here in Enana. They've been working on that for about 2 years. They're really close, just waiting on GVEA's final approval. That is a fantastic project that I fully support. Parts of my massive district, Glen Allen area, they have amazing hydropower that has been able to get them as low as 18 cents a kilowatt in the Copper Valley during the summer. In the winter, they have to go back on diesel, and it's outrageously high. And so I'm doing what I can, and they're doing what they can to find a more permanent solution there. But absolutely, these types of green energy, we should be doing what we can to push and develop. And so I'll be absolutely looking at legislation to move some of those projects forward.
Okay, thank you. Ashely Carrick, our fourth question, we'll start with you responding. Would you support legislation such as that proposed last session by Senator L.V. Gray Jackson for a statewide ban on chokeholds, a ban on shooting at moving vehicles, required body cameras, required comprehensive reporting on use of force, required de-escalation, and cultural competency training for public safety officers, I presume?
Yeah, I'm actually familiar with Senator Gray Jackson's bill. I was really pleased to see it introduced, and in the hectic nature of the session last year, didn't get a chance working with the House Finance Committee to actually go through that legislation for my boss. But I definitely do support legislation to that effect, and I hope to see it reintroduced in the next legislature. I think Alaska has unfortunately had far too many incidents, many of which have ended up in the news, many of which have happened in Fairbanks in the interior, related to officer-involved conflict and officer-involved shootings. And many of these incidents, in fact, a great majority of them involve Alaska Native individuals or people of color in general. And that is a tragedy. There is so much that we can do to avoid these incidents from taking place and to prioritize de-escalation. I also had the opportunity recently to serve on a grand jury. So I got to see the criminal justice side from the court side as well. And I think I also would just expand on the question and say I support looking into ways to improve outcomes for individuals in the.
Elijah Verhagen, same question, and I'll restate it. Would you, as a state legislator, support legislation that includes a statewide ban on chokeholds, a ban on shooting at moving vehicles, required body cameras, required comprehensive reporting on use of force, required de-escalation and cultural competency training for public safety officers?
So I'll just start off by saying I grew up in Enana, and I lived in Enana because my dad was the magistrate for not just Enana, but Healy, Tanana, and covered a lot of the villages. And so I grew up knowing troopers and police officers, and from a day. And so I want to start off with that. However, just because I believe most of our police and troopers are doing what they can to follow the law and do what they can to keep us safe. There are always a few exceptions, and those exceptions and their actions need to have ramifications. And so absolutely, these discussions that we're having right now are very important. At least the troopers side of things, any trooper that chooses to use that. Now, first of all, I've talked with troopers about this. It's a last minute resort. If the situation is getting out of control and, someone is resisting arrest and they feel like, my life might be in jeopardy, then they may choose to use that option. And if they do, they actually have to file a report and the reasons why they used it, etc. So most of them are not going to choose to use that unless they really feel that their life is in jeopardy. So I would look at L.B. Gray Jackson's bill on that regard. And I don't know if I might amend it to take that portion out of it. The other things, shooting at moving vehicles, I would look at that as well, but I do support body cameras. And again, talking with some else right now. And I think that be good for all of us and more transparent.
Thank you so much. Kevin McKinley, same question. As a state legislator, would you propose legislation or would you support legislation that imposed a statewide ban, for instance, on chokeholds, a ban on shooting at moving vehicles, requires body cameras for public safety officers, requires comprehensive reporting on use of force and de-escalation and cultural competency training, et cetera? Is that something that you would support? And you are muted. Classic Zoom.
Thank you. I first want to thank our peace officers out there. It's a really tough job that they have, going to work every day, facing some of the things that none of us would want to face, and they do it on a daily basis. Are you talking to me? Because I see you talking. Oh, okay. And when I look at this legislation, I don't know if I've got it correct or not, but I thought the reporting of the the reporting of use of force, I thought that was passed, or anyway. There's parts of that legislation that I really do support. I think a ban on chokeholds is very important. The part about shooting at vehicles at first sight, I think it's a no-brainer, but what if that vehicle is shooting at you and the peace officer needs to respond? So I think we need to look at some of the unintended consequences of these situations. I think that this bill is important. I think we need to look at it and just find out what we can do and what's best for our peace officers, because I do believe that they would know best in this. But yes, I do think there are some things in there that definitely need to pass, especially the ban on chokeholds.
Okay, thank you. This next question, this fifth question, Elijah Verhagen, we're going to start with you. Our state, as well as the rest of the country, is plagued with negative statistics regarding missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and Black and Indigenous people of color individuals. If elected, how can you support community and law enforcement solutions for the missing and murdered?
This is a very important topic, and something that's very sombering, to say the least. Coming from Nenana village and covering so many of the villages, I have seen this my whole life, and it's very, very sad and absolutely needs to be addressed. So currently, my opponent, actually, Click Bishop, was carrying Senate Bill 63, which dealt with quickly accessing power of attorney and information for relatives to access power of attorney and information on accounts to help find their loved ones, and if they end up going missing. And so that bill I have talked with the sponsor who actually crafted that legislation, who also lives in my district. If elected, I'm going to be absolutely pushing that hard. For whatever reason, my opponent never even asked for a hearing. You know, it was introduced in January and it never even had a hearing. And yet, as co-chair of finance, he has a lot of power. So that is something that I will absolutely be doing, is doing what we can to help get access to records to quickly jump right on search parties and information, any clues that we can get to help find these people that are that go missing. I think we need to be absolutely tough on any, you know, perpetrators of our women of color and just women in general statewide. We need to be doing measures. You know, one thing that I was working for Sharon Jackson, a conservative woman there down in Eagle River, who was very passionate about this as well. And in 2020, I was working for her, and we started crafting legislation that COVID happened and we didn't get to introduce it, but it was creating a hotline for victims that may feel like they're starting to be trafficked, but don't know yet that they are being trafficked, which happens. A lot of our women come in from the villages to Anchorage and Fairbanks, and they need a place to stay. They need some help, maybe rides, and people offer them this help. And then within about 3 days, they think that they're getting help, and then all of a sudden their cell phone's taken away from them and they start being trafficked. And so I want something quickly so they can call a 3-digit number so it's easy to remember, and be able to talk with a professional, but not necessarily have to call the police, because many of them are scared and don't know yet that they're being trafficked. And so I think any measures that we could be pushing to help these women statewide is absolutely crucial and a top priority of mine.
Thank you very much. Kevin McKinley, same question. If elected, how can you support community and law enforcement solutions for the missing and murdered?
It's a tragic thing that Alaska is leading these statistics. And coming from Kotzebue, this kind of hits close to home, to be honest. Try not to get emotional on this question. This has recently hit the news for the last few years. We had an attorney general come out to Alaska because of this problem being so bad. And we can't forget these people. These people are a part of our community, and it's important that we follow up on this. One of the things that's the problem is that we don't have enough trained people to investigate these cases up in the villages. And so to fix that, really, in my opinion, is that funding's needed. If you really want to get down to the root of the problem, that we're going to have to pass some legislation that we can get funding, which can help with training and help solving some of these cases. And as I believe everybody agrees, that's very important. We need to do that. It needs to be done. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And Ashely Carrick, same question. If elected, how can you support community and law enforcement solutions for the missing and murdered?
Thank you so much. This question, like Elijah and Kevin both mentioned, is sobering and it's devastating. And it is really tragic that Alaska leads the nation in missing and murdered individuals, and particularly for Indigenous women and people of color. We have experienced so many missing cases and murdered cases here in Fairbanks in the interior as well. So this is something that plagues both our state and our communities here in interior Alaska. I think personally we have to start this issue and work on it from the ground up. We need diversity in law enforcement. I mentioned supporting in the last question, what I believe are reasonable and common sense preventions for law enforcement kind of overstepping their bounds. But at the end of the day, I do have as a platform goal providing for the public safety of Alaskans. So we also need to have enough officers to be able to respond both here in Fairbanks and in our rural communities. And we don't have that right now. I've had the great fortune of being able to work in rural Alaska as a research assistant here in the interior and having the experience of being involved in a public safety situation where there wasn't someone to respond. And the fear that I experienced is something that I cannot imagine multiplying over and over again. And we know that so many people across our state live in fear of what could happen day to day without public safety help. So we need diversity in law enforcement. We need adequate law enforcement. We need people who are trained to investigate missing and murdered cases. And we also need community pathways for accountability for officers and for law enforcement and for outreach to work on these cases. All of these things are extremely important. And ultimately, whatever we can do to move the needle and improve outcomes for all of our communities and individuals are absolutely essential.
Okay, thank you so much. And now for our 6th of 7 substantive questions, Kevin McKinley, we're going to start with a response from you. What do you intend to do about the poor returns of salmon in the Yukon and Kuskokwim drainages? How will you work with your fellow legislators to address the current subsistence food crisis?
This is a huge problem in the state of Alaska. I believe we look at 140,000 salmon as a average return, and we're not even hitting 20% of that currently. It's been recently talked about that this was a bycatch problem. But in that research, one of the things that they're looking at is it possible that some of that bycatch is actually Asian salmon, which would be farmed salmon. So right now, what's really needed is a bigger return of salmon into the Yukon-Kuskokwim rivers. And the department is looking at what is causing that right now, whether it's climate, affecting the food, the feeding grounds of the salmon. And so there's not really a great answer right now. If you start talking to all the people that do the research on the fish, but what is needed is more resources to these departments so that we can find out what is going on. And that's the best answer I have right now. And that's the best answer that I've gotten from the people that are working on these research projects. In fact, I was just in a meeting today on this topic. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Ashely Carrick, same question. How will you work with your fellow legislators to address the current subsistence food crisis?
Yeah, and yet another really important issue and really pressing issue for Alaska and for the interior. I personally my hierarchy is set in my mind, and it has been since I was very young and throughout my time living and working here. I believe that subsistence comes first. If we can't even provide for the needs of Alaskans here at home who are living off of these resources, then we have got a crisis on our hands and we need to do something about it immediately. And that's the challenge that some of our communities are facing. After that, I believe that personal use fishing for Alaskans comes second, and commercial, in my mind, is a really important part of Alaska's economy and our industry. But I do think that right now, the hierarchy is flipped on its head, and we have prioritized subsistence as sometimes a last, only if we have the right escapement goals met, resort. And really, what I would like to see us focus on is what we can control here at home. We can control the amount of bycatch that we're taking here in Alaska, and I think that should be where our focus is in the short term. In the long term, climate factors are definitely impacting our subsistence fisheries, and we need to ensure that we're addressing some of those issues for the long term as well. I do think that there's a hierarchy that exists where all three, commercial, personal use, and subsistence, can exist in harmony. I don't think that they're being adequately balanced right now, and I want to work on solutions to make sure that we're prioritizing subsistence for Yukon and Kuskokwim drainages first.
Thank you. And Elijah Verhagen, of course, the same question. How will you work with your fellow legislators to address the current subsistence food crisis?
So this is probably in the top 3, absolutely, of concerns for my constituents in District 36 of my Senate district. I've been all over the place campaigning this summer. I was in Fort Yukon talking with the chief about this. I was in Galena talking with them about this. I was in Minto, right where I live in Inanna. These communities have been shut down for 2 summers from fishing. This is subsistence for them, and it's It's crucial that we fix this in the next 2-3 years, or there's not going to be the salmon, that we've ever had in the past. And so I have a lot of ideas, actually. Now, I don't claim to be an expert on everything, but this issue in particular, I carried legislation for Dave Tallarico when I was a staffer in 2017 for him. We got it past several committees, and because of politics, it got held up. But this legislation that I carry, which I will carry again, is fish egg incubation, salmon egg incubation. Fish and Game has been doing this science for 45 plus years with the Golcana hatchery. That's why their runs down there are so strong. That's why so many people go down to the Copper Valley and Chitna and that area to dip net. They have amazing results with this technology. And what it is you take and mix with it some genetic diversity. You mix the salmon eggs and the milt, and you incubate the eggs. Now, in nature, when they're hatched and laid in the stream, only about 5% of the hatch actually make it to the fry stage, and then they go live their life, and only 3% come back 5 to 7 years later. So fish incubation can get the survival rate from 5% in nature up to 95% with this fish incubation to the fry stage. Then you put them right back in this legislation. It was all outlined. You put them right back in the same stream you took them out, and they go live their life as a natural fish, having to learn to hunt and everything else. And then you're getting a 3% return on a 95% survival rate instead of a 5% in nature. So this is crucial that we get this done. You'd have to hire a biologist. You'd have to get a permit through Fish and Game. It's not just anyone being able to do this, but we worked with TCC and Doyon, and I'll be carrying that bill again because it's crucial we get this right quickly because we need more fish. Trawling and bycatch is also a factor, and we need to be looking at that as well. And I am of the mindset that if we need to, we should always be taking care of Alaskans' needs first. And so if we need to put a suspension or something on commercial fishing to first take care of our needs as Alaskans first before we export all of our delicious salmon, maybe let's look at that. I don't want to have to get to that point, but Alaskans first. This is our state and these are our resources. So that, and also the moose declining population is crucial right now, and I have a plan for that. I don't know how much time I have left. Okay.
I've got to call it right there. And thank you, Wendy, for keeping time for us. But you will have an opportunity, Elijah Verhagen, I think, to continue on with your answer with this next question. We are going to start, however, with Ashely responding here. Ashely Carrick, the last question for the substantive portion of the evening. What is the biggest need in your district, and how would you address it?
It's hard to pick just one issue for any of our districts. Alaska currently faces a lot of challenges, and we also have a lot of opportunities. In my district, it's pretty easy for me to say education is my biggest priority for what I can provide for my constituents. I think both K-12 and UA education need to be prioritized and invested in. And that includes both monetary investment and a cultural investment on the part of our legislators. I believe in increasing the base student allocation for K-12, in providing for a retirement system that adequately attracts and retains qualified educators to work and stay in our district. And even though it's been knocked down by the state Supreme Court as not constitutional, I'd like to explore ways and opportunities the legislature can ensure stable and predictable funding in the wake of not being able to forward fund K-12 education any longer. And then the university is critically important to District 35. House District 35 is blessed to have the flagship campus for the University of Alaska here in our district, and I am uniquely positioned to be the strongest advocate that the legislature has for the university. I am a student, I have been a student, a staff. I'm currently teaching at the UAF Community and Technical College downtown. I'm also an alumni. And so being able to provide for UA education is both a priority for our district and something that I'm really personally passionate about. I've carried the University of Alaska's budget for the last 2 years in legislative cycles. And I've also been able to work on legislation to benefit the university, including reauthorization of technical and vocational education in the legislature. And I've also been the point person covering both K-12 and university issues for Representative Wolf for my 5 years working with him. So ultimately, in our district, I want to see stable and predictable funding for education. I want to see investment, both, again, monetarily and culturally, from our legislators on education issues. And I want to work with the educators, the staff, and the administrators in our district to figure out the best solutions for moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Elijah Verhagen, same question, biggest need in your district, what would you do to address it?
So because my district has District 35 and District 36 in it, the needs are very diverse. They're huge and they're different. But I would say I'll briefly talk about maybe a top need in both. So I've already kind of talked about the salmon and the food security, and the moose declining populations. That's a huge topic in my rural district, as well as the high energy prices. It's crazy. In the summer, Copper Valley has hydropower that helps them have about 18 cents a kilowatt hour in the summer, but in the winter, it skyrockets up to about 80 cents a kilowatt in some of the areas, which is just really, really crippling and hurting those areas out there. So those two issues are very crucial out there. Fairbanks, as Ashely said, a reoccurring theme is the university, and that's a priority. I chose to stay in state because I wanted to stay in state, and I wanted a higher education that I didn't have to leave the state for, and I was blessed to have 2 degrees that I could attend that I actually wanted to attend, wanted to major in. And so fighting for to keep UAF and our UA system strong in Alaska is a top priority of mine. Kids and people shouldn't have to go out of state to get higher education. We lose most of them when they do. So that's a top priority in District 35 as well. But a reoccurring theme in both districts that I've been running into is a statutory full PFD, especially now that everyone's filling up their fuel tanks. This year's PFD, which included a $650 energy relief handout instead of a full statutory PFD, that was very helpful with the crazy inflation we have right now. However, it still was not a full statutory PFD because of some of the mindset of legislators down in Juneau repeatedly ever since 2016 attacking that. And that is something that the rural areas really need. It's a poor district, District 36 is. And so that's a reoccurring thing, but not just in District 36, 35, I've been hearing that as well. So there's a lot of needs and desires and yeah, not just desires, actual needs that I've addressed, but also door knocking. I've door knocked about 1,000 doors at least just in Fairbanks, and a common reoccurring theme is term limits. So I will be introducing an 8-year term limit bill because the longer a legislator is in Juneau, I've realized the less in touch with their constituents they become. And so I would love to have an 8-year term limit bill with a mandatory break after that. And I think that would fix most of the career politician problems we have in Alaska.
Okay, thank you so much. And Kevin McKinley, last but not least, same question. What is the biggest need in your district? How would you address it?
This is a really hard question to go last at. We've covered so many topics about our district. It is a very large district and it is very diverse. As it was said that the University of Fairbanks UAF is a very important part of our district and important part of our state. One of the things that I have heard is a reason that for the young people to stay here, they graduate from UAF and they end up leaving our state. And what I think that we need to look at is a pipeline from education to jobs. That's one of the things I've heard out there, door knocking and talking to people. One of the things that wasn't mentioned is I started hearing more and more and more about is crime. We're starting to see more crime in our districts. As the inflation starting to go up and people are having more or harder time making day-to-day paychecks, we're seeing drug use going up, and all those things combined. There's neighborhoods that I've knocked on before that have never had a crime problem, and now we're starting to see it more and more and more. I think that really needs to be addressed. There's a few neighborhoods in our district that have been just repeatedly going to the troopers, going to whoever they can to get some relief from the crime problem. I do agree that education is an issue that we need to address. K through 12, one of the things I've heard is that the parents are wanting to have more say in not only what the kids learn in school, but how they're learning it. I've heard that repeatedly. Inflation, fuel oil prices. It's been a real big mixture this year. And so I think that we do need to try to get as big a PFD as we can to the people. I think that it came at a right time this year. And I think that if we would have had one of the smaller PFDs that we've gotten before, I think there's a lot of people that would have been in trouble. It's going to be a hard winter this year. And a lot of people are worried about making it through. And so I keep hearing that over and over and over again. So this is a great question. And do I have 1 minute left or, okay. It is a really good question because as you're walking out there, you really get to learn about the district and really hear what they're saying, and then trying to put together commonalities between, your airport area versus Chena Ridge and Chena Pump to Lakeview to all these different precincts, and finding out what they have in common and what they have different, and how to put those needs together. And you do start hearing some repetitive things going on. One of those is crime, one of those is inflation, and some of those are education. Thank you very much. It's a great question, by the way.
Thank you. And I do want to express my sincere appreciation and gratitude to all three of our candidates who are here this evening for their tone of civility, which you've all maintained beautifully throughout the evening. That concludes our substantive question portion of the forum. We're going to move now into a lightning round. This is a rapid fire style of question and answer. It's not fair to you. Of course, it's not. We do, however, expect a binary yes or no, an instinctive, reflexive yes or no on these questions. And just without qualification, we won't have the opportunity. We don't have the time to hear your explanations, but it may interest our audience to get your kind of sense of whether you're on the yes side or the no side of these questions. We only have 5, so I'm going to move through each of these. We don't have red or green panels, so I'll just go around to each of you, and each of you will have the opportunity to say yes or no as a response to each of these questions. Fair enough? Okay, wonderful. So I'll start here with question number 1. And Elijah, you'll go first. As an elected leader, would you vote to codify the right to all and any reproductive healthcare options into law?
No.
Okay, Kevin McKinley.
Would you repeat the question?
Absolutely. As an elected leader, would you vote to codify the right to all and any reproductive healthcare options into law?
I get. I'm trying to get what the question is saying, and I guess if that question is saying a right to an abortion anytime, I guess it would be no.
It says any and all, so absolute reproductive freedom. Ought that to be codified into state law?
I'd have to say no.
Reproductive healthcare options. Okay, Ashely Carrick, same question.
Yes.
Okay. Question number 2, and we'll start with Kevin McKinley. Question number 2. This is a longer question. Bear with me. Last session, Senator Wilson carried Senate Bill 174, the Protect Natural Hairstyles Bill, that restricted workplaces and school districts from establishing any dress codes or regulations that discriminated against Black hairstyles. Through an amendment in the House, the workplace provisions were removed. That bill passed as amended, and thousands of Black Alaskans are still unprotected from hair discrimination. Do you support a bill protecting Black Alaskans from hair discrimination in the workplace? And Kevin McKinley, questions.
Oh, am I muted? No. Do I support them having hair freedom?
Yeah.
That basically, yeah.
Ashely Carrick, do you support a bill protecting Black Alaskans from discrimination in the workplace?
Yes.
Okay, and Elijah Verhagen, same question. Do you support a bill protecting Black Alaskans from hair discrimination in the workplace?
Yes.
Okay, question number 3. Should Juneteenth be a state holiday? Ashely Carrick.
Yes.
Elijah Verhagen, should Juneteenth be a state holiday?
Yes.
Kevin McKinley, same question. Should Juneteenth be a state holiday?
Yes.
Hard to say, should Juneteenth. Excellent. Okay, question number 4. Do you support limits on campaign contributions by individuals or political action committees? Elijah Verhagen, yes or no?
Yes.
Kevin McKinley, do you support limits on campaign contributions by individuals or PACs or political action committees?
No.
Okay. And Ashely Carrick, yes or no, do you support limits on campaign contributions, either by individuals or by PACs?
Yes.
Okay, last question. Do you support the current ranked choice voting system? Kevin McKinley.
No.
Ashely Carrick.
Yes.
Elijah Verhagen.
No.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much for graciously participating in our rapid fire round of questions. It really does help to flesh out some of the differences between you in your political ideology and in your political values. And I think many of our audience members are here precisely to kind of become more informed around where those differences exist. So that's wonderful. We're nearing the end of our time together. Right now, we're going to move into our closing statements. Each of you will have 2 minutes. Ashely Carrick, we're going to start with you.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. And thank you again to the NAACP for hosting this forum and for everybody who is online tonight listening. We can't see you or how many of you there are as the candidates, but I hope that it's a good audience turnout and that this has been an informative process for everyone. I am running because I am fiercely passionate about the state of Alaska. I'm a 4th-generation Alaskan. I was born and raised here. This is my home. I intend to work for Alaska's prosperity and future, no matter what role or capacity I serve in, though I do hope to serve as the next representative for House District 35. I've held a variety of roles in this community. I've been on the Early Childhood Development Commission. I've served on the Board Diversity Committee for the school district. I've worked for the Fairbanks Summer Arts Festival as their board vice president and as a community volunteer. I want to see people who are experienced in office, people who understand both the procedural and political workings of the Alaska State Capitol, and I have that experience. I also have a background in public health. I understand social determinants of health, and I want to work to achieve equity and inclusion for all Alaskans, regardless of their background or socioeconomic status. In addition to being experienced, I'm energized. I am ready to work hard for this community on the complex challenges that we have and push us forward as a state towards the many opportunities that are laying right there at our feet as well. I plan to give this job and this work everything that I have. I also plan to work across the aisle with my colleagues, and I have experience to do that as well. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm all in for Alaska. What that means to me is that I'm not just working to kick the can down the road for 1 year or even 5 years. I'm looking to make long-term decisions, regardless of what that might mean for my own reelection, that are going to help advance the opportunities and the outcomes for Alaskans 10, 15, 100 years from now. We need people who are willing to go to Juneau and work hard on these complex issues, who are willing to work across the aisle, who are willing to take a hard look at everything we're facing and then figure out how with their colleagues, we're going to find solutions. And I intend to get the input of my constituents along the way. And I thank you all so much for listening. And I hope this is part of an ongoing conversation between myself and the community of Fairbanks and this House District 35 as well. Thank you all so much. And please vote on November 8th or before.
Great. Thank you. Elijah Verhagen, concluding remarks, 2 minutes.
So I would like to thank you guys again for hosting this and giving us this opportunity to speak to you. I am very passionate about my state. I love it here. Born and raised here. Every time I go outside, I like doing vacations and such, but this is home. Every time I come back, I'm just like, I'm back. I'm home. Despite it being cold and dark sometimes, it's home. I represent running to represent a massive district of interior Alaska with very diverse needs. And many of us have felt very, very ignored for many years, especially in the rural areas. I am running against someone who's been in there 10 years already and is heavily funded by not just unions and union employees, because I have a lot of family and friends in unions that support me, but union bosses and many other special interest money going into my opponent's campaign. If you look at APOC, which I appreciate that APOC discloses donors, if you look at the last report in APOC, only one person out of 50 donors that donated to my opponent, Click Bishop, lived in District R. Only one out of 50. You compare that with mine, and out of 90 donors, 52 live in my district. So I am funded by the people, not special interests and PACs. And I am really, I'm fighting for values that are important to me. I'm fighting to increase our fish and moose populations. I'm fighting for our university. I'm fighting for a statutory PFD, or pushing it statewide ballot for everyone to have a say to vote yes or no, shall we change the formula? Because I believe that's the people's money. It's not a handout. I am doing what I can to hold people accountable with term limits. And I think that's important. Verhagenforsenate.com is my website. My opponent doesn't even have a website. With all the money he has, he doesn't think it's important enough for you to make an informed vote and create a website. And that's concerning to me. So thank you.
I'm sorry, I have to cut you off there. I suspect you can't see the time on your...
No, I'm sorry, but thank you for having me.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, thank you. And last but not least, Kevin McKinley, your concluding remarks. 2 minutes.
Thank you. I really want to thank everyone for putting this event on. I think it's really important. And I want to take this time to also apologize for not making this event in my last couple of runs for State House. You've been wonderful hosts, and you've put on a great event with great questions that really makes one think, which is important for somebody that wants to be a legislator for the state. As I said before, I'm a business person with locations throughout the state. I employ a diverse group of people. I've also worked with nonprofits and children's hospitals. And I really want to say that that's really given me a lot of experience on working with people, organizing people. And when you're down in Juneau, you have to remember that you're not just working for your district or your party. You're working for everyone. You're everyone's representative. And that is important for a legislator to know. And I want you to know that I will work hard down in Juneau for you to bring common sense solutions to these complex problems that we have, that we need to do. And I'm working for all of us. And as it was said before, on November 8th or before, please get out and vote, because our voting numbers are awful. And if you know somebody that's not voting, please tell them to go vote. It's important. I want to thank you all very much. Go vote.
Okay, excellent. And I just want to remind, that concludes our evening. I want to remind everyone who's listening that we were joined by 2 candidates running for House District 35 in Ashely Carrick and Kevin McKinley. We were also joined by Elijah Verhagen, who is running for Senate Seat R. Thanks so much to everyone for your kind attention. Thanks so much to the NAACP for everything that you do for our community and for organizing this event. And just to echo something that everyone said tonight, please do remember to vote November 8th, if not earlier, on Election Day. Joe, let me turn things over to you.
Hey, thank you, Professor Hirsch, for being a great moderator. Thank you to the candidates. As a former elected official, I know firsthand how hard it is to put yourselves out in a community to go for a position and to be the person who takes the arrows and the ridicule. But what you're doing is so important, and we so appreciate the fact that you're willing to put yourselves out there for the sake of the community. I just wanted to give a couple of updates. So early voting starts on October 24th, and and election day is November 8th. We hope folks can go out and vote. any of that time period is very important, as Mr. McKinley said. We also are working with 5 other nonpartisan organizations to do sign waving to get folks to vote. And that's going to be, I believe, October 24th and October 28th. And then we also will be holding a rally to have people come out and vote on October 29th at Barnett Magnet School with 5 other nonpartisan organizations, and then a march to the polls from 12 to 3. So we're going to try to do things to get people out to vote. We